The American power grid is closer to collapse than it has been in 50 years, and the thing pushing it over the edge is not a hurricane or a cyber attack. It is the chatbot sitting open in your browser tab right now. Let's go back to September of 2022. California is stuck inside a 10-day heat dome that refuses to break. Not a typical summer afternoon spike, the kind of heat that builds into the night, compounds by morning, and gives the grid no window to recover. Sacramento shattered its all-time high-temperature record. Reservoirs feeding the state's hydroelectric systems were already depleted after years of drought. Then came the evening of September 6th. Grid operators watched their reserve margin, the emergency buffer of extra power capacity, bleed toward zero in real time. State officials did something unprecedented. They sent a mass emergency alert to every single cell phone in California, asking residents to turn thermostats up, delay laundry, and stop charging electric vehicles immediately. Within 20 minutes, demand across the grid dropped by roughly 2 gigawatts. The system stabilized. The crisis passed. By the narrowest margin in modern American grid history, California avoided catastrophic rolling blackouts that would have plunged hospitals, senior care centers, and families with infants into darkness during a life-threatening heat event. 3 months after that near miss, a company called OpenAI released a product called ChatGPT. You know what followed. 100 million users in 60 days. The fastest consumer product adoption in recorded human history. Every major technology company on the planet pivoting to build its own version within a year. And within 2 years, the same electrical grid that had barely survived that September was being asked to absorb a massive, always-on new load it was never designed to carry. That is the core of what we are discussing today. Because every summer from here through at least 2028, your household is going to face a combination of pressures that simply did not exist the last time a heat wave put American lives at serious risk. I have been studying preparedness for 14 years. I have built threat frameworks around ice storms, supply disruptions, civil unrest, hurricanes, heat waves, and economic collapse. I have never once written the words artificial intelligence on one of those lists. That was a mistake. And if you have been running the same kind of playbook, it may be yours too. Here is what this video covers. Why the American power grid is heading into the most volatile summer season it has seen since the 1970s. Why AI is quietly at the center of that problem. And most importantly, what a real preparedness plan looks like when the threat is not a storm or a war, but a data center 2 states away. We will get specific. The numbers matter. And by the end, I will walk you through the exact layered system I use to keep my household safe, fed, and functional through a multi-day summer blackout. Real costs, real products, no performance. Start with one number. A single query into an AI chatbot, one prompt, one response, can draw up to roughly 1,000 times the electricity of a traditional search engine query. That figure is not from a fringe source. It comes from mainstream industry analysis covered by major financial and technology outlets in their reporting on the AI power demand crisis. 1,000 times. Sit with that for a moment. Every time someone asks an AI to summarize a document, draft a message, or generate an image, the energy pull is roughly equivalent to performing a standard web search 1,000 times over. And hundreds of millions of people are doing exactly that every single day. Industry data tracking global data center electricity consumption has shown double-digit percentage growth year over year, with the most recent figures pointing to annual demand increases of roughly 13%, driven almost entirely by AI workload. Where is all that electricity coming from? The same grid that powers your home. The largest grid operator in the country is a nonprofit called PJM Interconnection. If you live in New Jersey, Virginia, Illinois, Kentucky, or anywhere across the Mid-Atlantic or Eastern Midwest, roughly 67 million Americans, your electricity runs through PJM. And PJM is in serious trouble. Earlier this year, PJM announced it was scrambling to locate 15 additional gigawatts of generation capacity. To put that in perspective, 15 gigawatts is enough electricity for more than a dozen large American cities combined. The reason they need it is that their own internal projections show a shortage of roughly 6 gigawatts against basic reliability requirements by 2027. That is not a gap you close with a press release. A new natural gas plant takes 3 to 5 years to build. A nuclear facility takes a decade or longer. The timeline does not fit the problem. Here is where it compounds. A single AI training run, the process of teaching a large language model from scratch, can consume tens of thousands of megawatt hours of electricity. One GPT-4 class model is estimated to have required the equivalent of what roughly 3,000 American homes consume in an entire year. One model. One training run. The industry is planning hundreds of those runs this decade, and they are concentrating in the same few geographic regions. Northern Virginia alone, a corridor the industry has nicknamed Data Center Alley, hosts the densest concentration of data center infrastructure on the planet. The town of Ashburn has over 150 data center facilities and is still actively expanding. This is not distributed demand spread evenly across the country. It is a massive, concentrated, always-on electrical load sitting inside one of the most congested grid territories in North America. Meanwhile, the supply side is moving in the wrong direction. Over the next 5 years, the United States is scheduled to retire roughly 104 gigawatts of baseload generation, mostly older coal and natural gas facilities. The replacement projects in the pipeline total around 46 gigawatts, and many of those are delayed by permitting backlogs or supply chain problems. So even without accounting for AI demand growth, we are losing reliable generation faster than we are building it. Add the AI load on top. The math becomes genuinely alarming. Here is something most people outside this issue do not fully understand. Total American electricity consumption was essentially flat from around 2007 through 2020. Appliances got more efficient. LED lighting replaced incandescent bulbs. Smart thermostats reduced waste. Every incremental efficiency gain roughly offset every new device plugged into the wall. The grid held flat for the better part of 15 years. That flat environment shaped every major planning document written by utilities, regulators, and grid operators during that period. The logic was straightforward: demand is stable, so we can retire older plants without replacing them at equal pace. Then, ChatGPT launched in late 2022. Within 24 months, projected demand growth for PJM's service territory alone jumped to nearly 5% annually for the coming decade. For a system that had been flat for 15 years, that is not a gradual adjustment. That is a structural break. A former chair of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission recently described the shift in terms that are hard to misread. He said, paraphrasing here, that just a few years ago, the threat of rolling blackouts felt distant. Now, he said, the reliability risk is across the street. That is a senior federal regulator speaking in those terms, not a prepper, not a YouTuber, a career energy official. His language carries weight. Do you understand yet why this summer matters differently than the ones before it? Because the grid has never faced the combination of factors it is heading into right now. Aging infrastructure, accelerating retirements, explosive new demand, climate patterns that push peak heat events harder and longer, and a regulatory and construction system that simply cannot move fast enough to respond. This is not fear-mongering. This is arithmetic, and arithmetic does not care what season it is. Let's talk about what all of this means at the household level, because that is where it becomes real. A multi-day summer power outage is categorically different from a winter storm blackout. In winter, the enemy is cold, and cold moves slowly. You have hours to respond. You can layer clothing, burn candles, huddle together. In summer heat, the window is much shorter. Core body temperature rises faster than most people expect, especially in the elderly, the very young, and anyone with a cardiovascular condition. The danger is not hypothetical, it is measured in hours. What does preparation actually look like for this specific threat? I break it into 4 layers: power, cooling, food, and communication. Each layer addresses a different failure point. None of them require you to spend thousands of dollars up front. You can build the foundation of all 4 layers for under $100 this weekend. Let's go through each one. On the power side, the goal is not to replicate your full household electrical load on backup. That is an expensive mistake most people make. The goal is to keep 3 specific things running: lighting, a small fan, and your communication devices. A quality power bank in the 20,000 to 30,000 milliamp hour range costs between $30 and $60 and will charge your phone multiple times and run a small USB fan for several hours. A headlamp with fresh batteries costs under $20 and keeps your hands free after dark. For anyone willing to invest beyond that baseline, a mid-tier portable power station in the 500 to 1,000 watt-hour range, paired with a single 100-watt foldable solar panel, creates a system that can sustain essential devices indefinitely as long as you have sun. These setups run between $300 and $600 and represent the most cost-effective backup power investment most households can make. They are not whole home generators, they are survival-grade essentials, and they cover the things that actually keep people alive. The goal of your power layer is not comfort. It is not running the television or the microwave. It is keeping one fan moving air, keeping your phone charged so you can receive emergency alerts, and keeping one light source reliable after dark. Everything beyond that is a bonus. Now let's talk about cooling, because this is where summer blackouts kill people and where most preparedness content falls completely short. Air conditioning is not a luxury during a heat dome. For vulnerable populations, it is medical infrastructure. When the grid goes down during triple-digit heat and the axe shuts off, a home that was 80 degrees inside will climb to over 90 degrees within a few hours, depending on the quality of the insulation and how much direct sun hits the structure. The techniques that genuinely work in this scenario are not expensive or dramatic. Mylar emergency blankets, the crinkly silver thermal sheets, taped to the interior side of south-facing and west-facing windows will block the majority of solar heat gain entering a room. A damp sheet hung across a doorway creates passive evaporative cooling when even a small amount of airflow passes through it. A battery-powered fan aimed across a shallow tray filled with ice will drop the local temperature in a sealed room by several degrees. These are not prepper gimmicks. They are engineering principles that kept people alive for generations before residential air conditioning existed. If your home has a basement, use it as your primary cooling refuge during an extended blackout. Even in the worst heat dome conditions, basements in most of the continental United States stay significantly below ambient outdoor temperatures throughout the peak of the day. Move a mattress to the basement. Run your fan down there. Anyone elderly, very young, or managing a cardiac or respiratory condition should spend the hottest hours of the day in that space. It is the most reliable passive cooling asset most households already own and almost no one thinks about in advance. If you do not have a basement, identify the lowest floor, most north-facing, most shaded interior room in the home. Close all other rooms off from it using doors and draft blockers. Concentrate everyone in that one space. The goal is to minimize the volume of air you are trying to keep livable. You are not cooling a home. You are triaging one room. That distinction is the difference between managing the situation and losing control of it. Here is a critical fact most people only learn after they need it. According to federal food safety guidelines, a fully loaded refrigerator will maintain safe food temperatures for approximately 4 hours after a power outage begins. A fully loaded freezer will hold safe temperatures for roughly 48 hours. But both of those figures assume the door stays completely closed. Every time you open the refrigerator or freezer during an outage, you release cold air and shorten the remaining safe window significantly. Make this decision before an outage ever happens. If power goes out, I will open the refrigerator exactly once in the first 12 hours, pull the highest priority perishables, and transfer them to a cooler with ice. After that, the refrigerator stays shut. The freezer does not get opened at all unless the outage extends past the 48-hour mark. Decide that now, so you are not making the call in the middle of a stressful situation. A $5 refrigerator thermometer placed on the top shelf of your fridge is one of the highest value preparedness items most people have never purchased. It tells you exactly when the interior temperature has crossed 40 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the safety threshold above which bacterial growth accelerates. Without it, you are guessing. Guessing during a blackout leads to foodborne illness, which is a genuine medical emergency when you are already dealing with heat stress and compromised communication systems. Dry ice is one of the most underrated tools in the summer blackout toolkit. Most major grocery chains and large general retailers carry it. 10 pounds of dry ice placed inside a freezer at the start of a known outage will typically extend safe cold retention by roughly 24 additional hours. 5 pounds placed inside a refrigerator buys approximately 1 additional day. It is not a permanent solution, but in a foreseeable event, an announced heat dome, a forecast storm, a grid advisory, dry ice is the cheapest extension you can deploy. Find out where your nearest source is before you ever need it. The mindset shift that matters most for food management during a blackout is moving from preservation thinking to triage thinking. The moment power goes out, your food inventory becomes a prioritized consumption problem. Raw meat, fresh dairy, and open condiments are on a short clock. Whole fruits and vegetables, hard cheeses, butter, and vacuum-sealed items will hold significantly longer. If 12 hours pass without a reliable power restoration timeline, shift modes completely. Cook the meat while it is still safe using a camp stove or outdoor grill. Eat the dairy-based dishes first. Reserve everything shelf-stable for day 3 and beyond. Most people make that pivot 18 hours too late. They keep hoping the power comes back. They keep opening the fridge to check. They lose the window. The decision to shift from preservation to consumption is the single most consequential food call you will make in a multi-day outage, and it needs to happen earlier than your instincts tell you. Let's move to communication, because this layer is almost always the one people underestimate most. Cell towers have backup power systems. Most are designed to last between 4 and 8 hours on battery alone. During a typical storm-driven outage, utility and telecom crews dispatch trucks with generators to maintain tower function, and service usually restores within a day or two. That is the scenario most people have experience with. A heat dome-driven rolling blackout affecting multiple states simultaneously is a completely different scenario. Recovery crews are stretched across dozens of cities at once. Equipment demand outpaces supply. The towers serving your neighborhood may go dark and stay dark for a duration beyond anything you have personally experienced. When those towers fail, your ability to call, text, navigate, or look up information disappears simultaneously. The single most cost-effective communication preparedness action you can take today costs nothing. Write down the phone numbers of your immediate family members, your doctor, your children's school, and your local non-emergency police line on a physical card. Keep that card in your wallet, not in your phone's notes app. Not saved in the cloud, written by hand, on paper, in your wallet. When every digital communication system is down, that card is the difference between being able to reach people and being completely isolated. Beyond the card, the essential communication tool for an extended blackout is a battery-powered radio, ideally one with access to NOAA weather band frequencies and a hand-crank charging option. Units covering those features are available for under $60. When every screen is dark and every tower is down, that radio is how emergency managers reach the public. It is how you find out whether the grid is coming back in hours or days. It is how you know whether evacuation is being considered. Every household needs one. For a more capable communication layer, GMister's radios, the handheld family radios available in pairs for around $80, allow direct voice communication with family members within a range of 1 to 2 miles when cellular networks are unavailable. If you have children who walk home from school, a spouse with a longer commute, or elderly relatives living nearby, GMister's radios are the most practical short-range communication bridge available to a household without specialized training. You do not need an amateur radio license to operate them. Buy a pair, test them once this weekend, and you have solved the most common family communication failure point in a blackout scenario. Many preparedness enthusiasts jump immediately to full amateur radio setups and quickly get lost in licensing requirements and frequency management. That complexity is unnecessary at the starting level. GMears solves 90% of the practical communication problem for a household at a fraction of the cost and complexity, and it works right out of the packaging. Now let's bring this back to the larger picture, because the details matter, but so does the frame. The California near miss in September 2022 happened because a climate event pushed grid demand beyond what the system could safely absorb. That event was survivable, barely, because it happened before AI fundamentally altered the baseline load the grid is asked to carry every single day of the year, not just during heat events. The ChatGPT launch 3 months later was not inherently a grid story. It was a technology story. But technology runs on electricity, and when the technology scales to hundreds of millions of daily users generating computation-intensive queries around the clock, it becomes a grid story whether anyone planned for that or not. The two events are now permanently linked. Every subsequent summer inherits both of them simultaneously. This is not an argument against AI. These tools are genuinely useful. The point is narrower and more practical than that. A technology most people interact with the way they used to interact with a search engine is quietly rewriting the energy physics of the infrastructure our entire civilization depends on. That rewrite is happening faster than grid operators, utility planners, regulators, and construction timelines can accommodate. And every summer from now through at least 2028, the resulting instability is going to stress test your household's ability to absorb a multi-day power outage during peak heat. The question is not whether you are aware of that. The question is whether you are ready for it. If you take nothing else from this video, take 3 actions before the week is out. First, buy a Tier 1 kit this weekend. A headlamp, a high-capacity power bank, and a small battery-powered fan. The combined cost is under $60 at most major retailers. Second, tape 2 Mylar emergency blankets to the inside of your west-facing windows before the first heat advisory of the summer hits your area. Third, write the paper card with your family's essential phone numbers tonight and put it in your wallet before you go to sleep. Those 3 steps cost under $100 and under 1 hour of your time. They also put your household ahead of the overwhelming majority of homes in your zip code in terms of functional readiness for a summer grid event. That is the baseline. Everything else we covered today, the layered power station setup, the dry ice protocol, the basement cooling refuge, the G-emissor's radio pair, you build that out over the next 90 days. Summer does not reach its most dangerous peak until mid-July. The window is real. It is not infinite, but it is enough. The preparedness content that actually helps people is not the dramatic version. It is not the bunker, the year's supply of freeze-dried meals, the fully off-grid compound. It is the boring, specific, affordable, and actionable version. The one you can actually execute this weekend without reorganizing your life or spending money you do not have. That is what we try to build here at my channel, and that is what I hope you are walking away with today. If this gave you something useful, please take a second and hit the like button. It genuinely helps my channel reach more people who are trying to get ahead of exactly this kind of threat. And if you want to keep going deeper on summer preparedness, grid resilience, and the practical systems that actually hold up when things get difficult, stay with us. There is a lot more coming. Stay prepared, stay calm, and make the decisions now that your future self will not have to make under pressure.